All right, so with that, ladies and gentlemen, let's find out what will restaurants and food chains look like in the future, even as we notice that the shopping malls have managed to grow a massive appetite for restaurants. So let's actually get together all of that around the F&B contribution towards the next phase of retail. So let's do that by inviting our next set of speakers. Spearheading the conversation, we have with us Bharat Maheshwari, Director, Head F&B India, Anarock Retail. So if I could please invite Bharat to please come on stage. And joining him, may I please invite Karan Kapoor, Managing Director of K-Corp. May I further please invite Ankit Gupta, Co-Founder, Burma. Our next speaker, we have with us Pawan Sahari, who's a Managing Director, Chrome Hospitality. We'd also like to invite Anshul Gupta, who's the founder of Eat Club Brands, formerly Box 8. And our next speaker, Raghav Verma, Co-Founder, Chayos. Can we please have a refreshing round of applause? It's all about food. It's about a segment that we all love so much. And that being said, let's actually gather everything about the future of India food industry. Let me quickly hand it over to Bharat Maheshwari. Over to you, sir.
Good evening, everybody. First of all, extremely sorry. I think the previous session took a lot of time. We'll try to wrap up it actually in that 40 minutes which we've been given. Good evening, everybody. Once again, welcome on the panel. Very interesting, actually. Everybody's talking about F&B. F&B is actually the new anchor, which is been talking about that. And I know that you guys are very busy guys. First of all, thank you very much for sparing that time in your busy schedule. I think last 1.5 days I've been spending a lot of time with mall owners, developers. Everybody is very curious to know that. I can tell you that guys, your guys are in demand. Everybody wants to know that what your new format you're working on, what is the new restaurant you're building that, what is the new cuisine you're actually working on, and which is the new sexy bar in town right now. And in that new, what is the tech you're actually adding into that as well. I think it's a lot of excitement about this category which is happening right now. I think I'm not going to take much time on that. I would want to really kick off the session from for all of you guys to really speak about that. And Karan, let me just start that actually discussion from you. I know that you're the third generation restaurateur right now. It's been about, first of all, congratulations, you've just completed 50 years. My first question to you, Karan, you have actually seen that restaurant how it's been really transformed from the last 10 years versus today, right? What exactly the few changes which you have seen that, right? That's my first bit of the question. And the second bit of that as well, where do you see yourself right now in the restaurant point of view? In the next 2 to 3 years, what's the really future look like for the restaurant industry?
Yeah, so thanks Bharat for that. So I think I'll answer the first and then the second. So I think if you look at it, in terms of, and maybe I'll kind of combine, both which are there. So I think, when we're seeing trends or what's happening around the space, I think there's some very predominant trends which you're seeing play out. I think one, of course, and coming out of COVID, you're seeing consumption kind of go through the roof, and a lot of that's driven a lot by the younger audience coming out. Certain themes that are playing out as well, especially on the liquor-led formats. It might be on the QSR side, which is kind of driving a lot of the consumption as well. And I think broadly when we've looked at it as well is you're seeing one, any formats which bring convenience or bring experience in terms of experiential formats. Those are kind of driving a lot of the traffic as well. I know you spoke about new and old, and maybe I'll just touch on that as well because looking 10 years back and now, I think there is a propensity for everyone to look for new, but I think also COVID kind of showed that having stable, strong formats as well. Because F&B, honestly, the biggest challenge has been for most people is consistency and execution. I think there are a lot of great ideas and a lot of great entrepreneurs, but I think where everyone ends up failing is the long game. And that really comes down to consistency of execution. And I think that's where really balancing from a portfolio perspective, when you look at a mall or you look at some locations which are multi-brand, is how do you kind of find the right balance of new exciting formats which consumers come and want to try because of the need of some consumers looking for innovation or new experiences, along with time, tried, tested formats which also drive sales and kind of work. So I think it's a bit of a mix of both. I don't know if that answers broadly what you asked.
No, I think, Karan, you rightly mentioned that as well. I think everybody's, the longevity is that, key word, I think, a lot of people open restaurant, mortality rate in this industry is the highest, right? After, when you do a lease for 5 years, but 90% of the restaurant really don't survive that, for that lease as well. I think it's interesting. Just moving on to Ankit, very interestingly, what we have traditionally, which we have seen that restaurateurs are very regional focused, right? They open a one restaurant, they run for about 10, 15 years, and after that, they really barely be able to open that second outlet, right? And second part is that as well, even the restaurant actually started from their one particular base city and moved to another city, but they will not be managed to get that fan following what they actually originally from the base city, right? But in your case, you actually started from a Bombay and then suddenly you moved towards north and opened couple restaurant there. Then you move towards east. I think you're the only restaurateur who has very successfully managed to do north, east, west, south, right? Now my question to you is that what is the mantra behind that? What really inspired you to really go and explore all the four, the north, east, west, south? And what are the challenges and that opportunity you really face in that during that when you explored India?
Very good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Bharat, firstly, for having me here. Great question. Firstly, I would like to touch upon the point that I've seen a paradigm shift in the trends in the restaurant business. Having an experience of roughly 17 years, where the only place where we used to go and dine earlier were multi-cuisine restaurants. So, you must be aware that you go to a restaurant, in the menu there were continental, Indian, and Chinese. And how I've seen the restaurants, move outside of the 5 stars and go into the standalone space in the last 7, 8 years. And not only multi-cuisine, the cuisine has moved towards more regional, more country-specific. And now not only country-specific, it's even like smaller tribe-specific. Now you have a cuisine such as the Mala cuisine, such as the Sichuan cuisine. And again, with the advent of tourism and people traveling to all different parts of the world, there is definitely an acceptance, of taste in multiple formats. Luckily for us, with Burmese cuisine, because of the geography, it's surrounded by China, Sri Lanka, like China, India, Thailand, Vietnam. So the flavors are very common. When we opened back in 2014, a single cuisine restaurant, that too vegetarian without alcohol, we were really, really taken aback by, in a positive way, by the response we got. And for us, what all that mattered was, being consistent, having the right SOPs, and we wanted more people to experience, what we were doing back in Bombay. And we did the difficult part first of taking it beyond Bombay. It's very easy to open, intra-city. And that's when we got the opportunity in north of India. And then we just asked ourselves that it's not that difficult. There are so many multinational companies which have their footprint across the globe and they do it by themselves. So what's stopping us? So we shifted our base for 4-5 months. I still remember when we opened in Gurgaon, we took a rented apartment in Nathupur Gaon. I don't know how many of you all are aware of Nathupur U Block. We stayed there for 4 months, just to ensure that the restaurant is up and running. Again, fans, guests poured in their love. Then we said, let's now go to Bangalore. And that's how organically the journey was. And looking back at all those years, now we are there in 7 cities. I think it's so easy today with the advent of technology, and acceptance of people to open your brand multi-city.
Thank you. Actually, Pawan, moving towards to you, you're pretty I would say that a pretty young restaurateur, which has been in the last 5 years, I think you have opened multiple formats across Mumbai, and it's already becoming a talk of the town. Traditionally, again, what we have seen that restaurateur opens a one chain, and then actually open a 4 or 5 more, format in the various part of that, different micro markets. But in your case, I think very interestingly, you have opened actually 6 different or 7 very curated format, right? And I think, the lingo of that, F&B industry right now, everybody you ask that, meet with them, they say it's actually a restaurant which turns into be a high energy bar, right? But I think in your case, none of your restaurant, whether it's Demi, whether it's Silly, whether it's a new one which you're opening this week, I think none of the restaurant is actually that high energy bar, right? It's concentrated on a food, but yes, your restaurants are very Instagrammable. It's very look, feel, very jazzy, very quirky. Are you really trying to set the new trend towards that? What's your thought on that?
So, first of all, Bharat, thank you so much for having me here and everybody at MacPick to be a part of the session now. Um, what I feel, Bharat, is when at Chrome, when we're scaling the company and figuring what is our sort of growth mechanism, we've of course been observing how the city has been reacting to many different restaurants that open, and also what plays the most important role for us is Bombay's geography, right? We are a vertical city, and people in Bombay ideally do not like to travel unless it's for work. We very soon realized that there are pockets of people, and they like being concentrated within those pockets when they're going out, because that's the amount of time that one person might have in Bombay. So rather than having one particular brand and then having that being scaled in different areas of Bombay where the APC might differ, the crowd profile might change, etc., we try and understand one area really well, and then we sort of market penetrate it with multiple brands in that zone, right? We really get into the depth and understand the ethos of a customer who's dining out and try and fulfill every need that that person might have at different times of the day. So let it be, a 12 to 3 lunch session, or 4 to 7 when they just want to sort of hang out, have a cup of coffee, or, do casual meetings. 7 p.m. onwards to say a 10:30, 11, which is generally dinner time, and that's when they either want to go out with friends or family, and post 11 p.m. converting into a very curated, say a cocktail bar setup, which then goes on till 1 a.m. or 1:30 a.m. Right? So where we found our niche is being into creating formats that are very, very adaptable, that sort of change with the day, and making sure that the first impression that our places have, which is primarily the aesthetics and the interior, that speaks out to anyone who's 6 and 60, right? So if that is, we're giving a point of convenience, we're giving a point of aspiration, and then which is followed by our 2 or 3 very strong pillars of food, beverages, and service, we've seen a very high retention rate in that. So that is the strategy that we have, and we ideally first want to, get into different segments and area categories in Bombay really well. We've already stepped into Goa with a boutique hotel, and so post Bombay and Goa is when we see setting up central operations in one city, completely penetrating the market there, and then moving on to the other.
Okay, you touched upon that Goa, it's very interesting. I would want to ask that as well. I know that you recently tied up, the Bhumi. Is it that Bollywood is becoming association with F&B? When we have seen that Baston, in Shilpa Shetty, we have seen that Numa, which is in Karan Johar, and recently you've also entered into that space. Is it really working well with the Bollywood, or what is that really angle we want to understand for the larger audience here? And
of course. So, Bharat, honestly, for us, the association with Bhumi Pednekar happened in the most organic sense. We actually know her for many years now, and we share great relations in terms of even discussing all our existing concepts. She's been to most of them, and we really had a great rapport. When Kaya in Goa was opening, and we were getting into our first venture, which is not only F&B but also hospitality, and creating a boutique hotel space. What we soon realized is that when anyone opens a restaurant in Bombay or a Delhi or a Bangalore, they are city-specific restaurants, right? But when you enter the Goa market, you are a national restaurateur because you're competing with everybody in India, right? The product has to be superficial. You need to be bang on with your brand positioning, right? And keeping in line with what was going on in Goa, which was more F&B and nightlife and high energy, we actually went the complete opposite direction with being into the slow living and wellness zone, right? So that is when Bhumi and her own ethos, so she actually represents India at UNESCO, keeping in mind the environment protection, etc. So that was in great synergy with what we were trying to do, conserve Goa and, take it a couple of years back where it was thriving with nature, but, over exploitation of natural resources has sort of damaged so many beaches of Goa. So where we are is the far extreme north, and combined with Bhumi, our first ethos was that, okay, let us completely take care of the space that we are trying to be in. We want to become a part of the culture here. So, that is how the whole association started off. And then, of course, for any brand to have a distribution or rather digital presence by any celebrity that coming in, right? So that just helps you take it a couple of months ahead of where you would have reached if this had been, just direct social media or maybe via ad spends. Keeping in mind our marketing background, we generally try and stick to a more organic approach and a lot of great content ideas that we collaborated with Bhumi on just pushed us ahead on the map. So.
Let me come back to Pawan on that, and let me quickly, come back to Raghav, Raghav, you ran a very interestingly, such a young age, you started this, actually Chayos. And very interestingly, now in this cafe space, there's, I think, a lot of players, it's, in past, of course, it's been always, cafe business. But I think in last about 2 years, there are a lot of, I think this space is becoming quite crowded right now, right? How do you really plan to then in the next 3 years, when everybody is talking about experience, how do you really like stand out from the crowd? What is your strategy to become that really, if there are 8 or 10 players in that cafe space, how do you become a standout of the next 2 to 3 years to become more relevant in this industry?
No, very good question. And I think there's been a lot of people coming into the coffee space, cafe space, and people are doing, a lot of brands are doing really phenomenal work, I must say. I think if I look at India 5 years, 10 years, 15 years down the line, you compare it with any developed economy, see the kind of per capita penetration that most of the social spaces have, and let's not look at it only as cafe. Social spaces are very deeply penetrated. So that's what the future is going to be. How do we differentiate? We are pretty much the leaders in chai cafe, and post COVID a lot of behaviors have changed. People are not going to office every day. A lot of people don't go to office anymore. People are working out of cafes now. People want to get out, but they want an experience. People want to get home delivery. They want that convenience. So it's just understanding what are those customer behavior nuances that have come in, and kind of building for that. And Bharat, honestly, I think that India has very few consumer brands. For such a large country, we are very underpenetrated when it comes to good brands. So the future is bright for all of us.
Sure, perfect. Anshul, quickly coming back to you, I think everybody's a restaurateur here, and I know that you run a 250 dark kitchens, in India, which is quite a big number. I think during COVID, when everything was shut, right, we have no other option to really call that, food at home. And I'm being very, honest about it. As a consumer, when I call food at home, the experience is really like, not that great what I actually get in the dine-in restaurant. I may just call from the same restaurant, which is my favorite restaurant, and when food comes at home, it's really like, not that taste, good. When I hear that about if investors who is actually, everybody, saying that the commissions, very high, aggregators are that. Aggregators are not making money. Consumer is not really happy when the product is getting, and that, investor is here yet to make money. But still, I think people are opening more and more delivery kitchen. What is the real future right now? Since now COVID has really vanished right now, people would want to really go out and experience, food. Where do you see this delivery business is actually going in the next 3 to 4 years down the line?
Sure. See, I think food delivery overall is still a very nascent industry. If you like zoom out and if you sort of look at things, it is still a 7-8-year-old industry at best. So I think we are still in very early stages of where this industry will eventually get to. If you look at restaurant space or eating out space in general, I think it's been around in India for a fairly long while. So I think fundamentally on the aggregator side, on the restaurant side, I think we are still in the stage where we are all trying to get to what really works best for the consumer. And I think it's not only in India, but even globally, the industry is still very, very nascent. So I think if you sort of, again, think of where we were about 7-8 years back, food delivery was done only by a handful of players. Most restaurants did not deliver food. And where we are today, cumulatively, the aggregators would do about 100 million orders every month. I think this number would be actually more than the number of visits that would end up in restaurants even today in the major cities. So clearly from the consumer side, there is a huge pull towards this whole phenomenon of delivery. And I think now it's up to us as cloud kitchens, these folks as restaurateurs and the aggregators to sort of make the economics work for it. But I think, in almost all industry, if there is a clear consumer pull, and if consumers really want a particular product or a service, I think all the various stakeholders associated with it make things work. And I think we have seen off late over the last 2-3 years that, Zomato is profitable. A bunch of global QSR guys are actually doing quite well on the back of delivery. McDonald's now has a 40% share in just deliveries. So clearly in pockets, there are, things that are working out really well for this ecosystem now. But I think finally, food delivery is one another medium to reach out to the consumer. So I think more and more incrementally, we'll see all different mediums converging. The restaurant folks would end up doing deliveries. The delivery folks would also try and get into offline spaces and have a physical storefront and have people walking in. And I think as brands get built out, and like Raghav said, I think India is still starved with brands. You could count the number of national brands in food in the country today. But I think over the next 5-10 years, as brands get built out, some would approach it from an online first, like what we have been trying to do, and some would get in from the restaurant side, but also build a good, credible delivery business on top of that.
Sure. Coming back to Pawan, to you, this is always what we heard, that when you, as a customer, you go back for that, for the food of the, the restaurant. But I think more and more when I travel to other cities as well, I've seen that people are actually, going to spaces. Everybody is making a larger-than-life restaurant, very Instagrammable. People really don't care about the food. Do you think that people really don't care about food, and it's more about clicking more pictures, getting that food on the table, and then eat that? Or is it still the food is irrelevant, because I'm sure you agree with that, right? Everywhere you go and see that more and more fancier restaurant, I'm sure in Goa you are there, that Asagaon only has about a 40 restaurant in one small really town that as well. And every restaurateur is trying to make that, more luxurious, the place. That now, are we making a really more larger than life restaurant, or food is lost somewhere, or the still food is that, first hero in that?
So, Bharat, I feel it's going to be food first always, right? And I think Karan exactly touched upon this. So being Instagrammable or having a larger than life space, etc., will float you for 6 months, 1 year, 1.5 years. You want to retain that space and be in that property for 9 years, because as we know, 90% of the restaurants today operate on rental modules, right? It's not cell phone properties. So, I mean, you'll only be able to pay that 10 to 15% of your sale value to rental if the restaurant is doing well for a very long period of time. And I think that is where the brand building happens, right? We have seen people grow up with loving a consistency of a particular product, right? It is not about who is serving the best pasta in town. It's about, I have been eating pasta at this place for the last 8 years, so I will only go here for pasta. I love butter chicken at Copper Chimney and I only eat there, right? So, I mean, it is eventually about brands that I have grown up eating at. So if someone opens up in Bombay today and claims to be the best out of the best, right, I still have a soft spot and a love for a place that I have been eating at since I have grown up, right? So I think it will be food first, taste first, quality first, always. Everything else is more of a costume you're making the space wear, right? So, I mean, the experience is your initial touch point. The food is something that increases retention.
Sure. Karan, quickly coming back to you, on that. So you, as a restaurateur, you have, I think, covered all that F&B gambit, right? You run a restaurateur, you are corporate catering, you run airports, you run that, highway retailing, and of course, you have a presence, in London, Singapore, and Africa, a lot of restaurants. Now, the question is that I think in the next, there's really like, shopping center, which is in the, I think in Bombay has not really seen any shopping center in there for a longest time, right? And I think by passing every year, I think shopping center is becoming really, really like, it's very squeezing that, right? But on the flip side, Everybody's saying that there used to be a time about 10 years back, they used to plan F&B is only a 5%. Now, what they're actually discussing right now is about a 30 to 40% F&B, which is like a large number. My question to you is that do we have enough and more depth right now to fill that? Let's say, for example, a 1,000,000 square foot mall, which is there as well, and we're talking about a 30%. We're talking about a 3 lakh square foot, space, which is there F&B. Do we have that kind of a depth in that market to open that kind of a restaurant and still survive that?
No, so I think, yeah, coming back, I think the earlier point was made about penetration, right? I think the India opportunity is immense on F&B, and I think each category, there's room for multiple players to build. And the reality is in India today, you don't have that many organized players across categories. So short answer to you is it would be difficult to fill up a mall and get quality across, and I think that is a struggle, and we speak to landlords all the time, and I think this is something you keep hearing as feedback. So I think today what you end up seeing is there's a mix of organized players who come in, and there's a bit of trial and error which landlords do with new formats and operators, but that's where you tend to see churn. Some click, some don't. But I think, the way it's going, you have a whole host of new entrepreneurs coming in, there's a lot of capital coming in, and there have been a lot of good success stories in F&B with private equity or other forms of capital that have come in. So I think that's going to keep giving impetus. The numbers you're seeing post-COVID. So a lot of things are moving from a trajectory perspective where you will see new brands, new ideas. 10 years back or 15 years back, I mean, Burma wasn't top of mind. Today, it's every city you go, people talk about Burma and they love the food. And so that's the whole thing, like entrepreneurs coming in with fantastic ideas, great execution, who are super passionate, and I think that will change. But yeah, today we're not there yet.
Understood. Ankit, I think we already got some intimation from that, we have already extended our timing. So I'm just, gonna, maybe at the last, I know that I can keep on, go on, but I think with the positive of time, we need to really wrap this up quickly. My last question to you that as well, Ankit, you are a perfect mix of that. When you're in a portfolio of restaurant, you're a perfect combination of the high street versus the malls as well, right? I think you're very well fit that. But there are some brands who are very mall conducive. There are some brands who are very high street conducive. If you can just touch upon that, what is that 2 or 3 advantage on the high street for a restaurateur, and what are the 2 or 3 advantage in a mall for any F&B operator? If you can touch upon that as well.
Right. So I think going forward, it would be definitely more mall versus high street. Both have their own set of challenges. High street, firstly, the advantages are accessibility and visibility. Easier to get to, right? Rather than mall, it's an effort. You have to first give the car for parking, then probably take the elevator, go to that particular place, and then you enter the restaurant, then you order for the food. So there's a delay in time, right? The other advantages of high street, what we feel is definitely overall branding, of the outlet really stands out. In malls, sometimes you're lost between like an array of restaurants, and which may even change your opinion to go to a different restaurant, per se. But I feel in the coming years, especially in India, the sentiments are very, very positive, especially for restaurants. We've seen it firsthand. We are very, very bullish on India as a market, and especially the malls, because a lot of the factors are taken care by the asset developer. Firstly is the parking. Secondly is, all the air conditioning, HVAC, be it the gas pipeline. So all these things. So the founder just has to focus on, on his business and how to market it in the best possible way. So definitely I see in the coming years, the share of Burmas in mall would be slightly higher. And also a fact that there are not many high street avenues coming in the coming years. And we see a lot of organized developers coming up with assets in different parts of the country. So that would again add, to the mall penetration more.
Thanks, Ankit. So I think interesting time ahead. Definitely, I think all mall developer is increasing from a 5 to 30%. Social spaces are becoming very critical for all the office occupier as well. I think we all need to now see that what with the really exciting times ahead in process. Thank you very much. It's such a delight to be a part of this such young and brilliant mind on this panel.
Also,
thank you very much.
Before we wrap up, I'd like to just touch upon the point which Karan made. I have seen firsthand how all the malls in India currently are carving out individual floors. A lot of the retail shops are converting into restaurants because the convenience of ordering a retail, one can even order from online, right? But one wants to get as close to the place where your food is prepared, right? And that restaurants are a social fabric. Everyone eats lunch and dinner. You need to go to a restaurant. So I see a big trend of that 5% becoming at least 30-35%, which we've already seen in Asian countries like Hong Kong and Singapore.
Correct. Thank you very much, Ankit. And once again, thank you very much, sparing them time. And thank you. Good evening. Have a good evening.
Thank you very much, Bharat, and thank you to all the speakers. I'm going to request you to please remain on stage. Bharat, I'm going to request you to please hand over a token of gratitude to all of your fellow panelists. Some appetizing insights that we managed to gather from this particular panel discussion.